Get out of my house right now, Angela. You are not part of this family anymore. My dad's voice echoed through the living room, loud enough for every single guest at the Thanksgiving party to hear. Forks froze in midair, glasses stopped halfway, and all eyes turned toward me. My heart pounded, but I didn't say a word. I just stood there, feeling the sting of humiliation as my father pointed to the door like I was some stranger who had barged in. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this story. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next, because every twist will leave you shocked. For a moment, the whole room was silent, until my aunt whispered, "Did he really just throw her out?" The whispers turned into murmurs, and I could see my cousins smirking as if they had been waiting for this scene all night. My sister Grace held her wine glass high, pretending to look surprised, but the small smile on her lips betrayed her. She knew. Maybe she even planned this. "Dad, please, not in front of everyone," I whispered, my voice shaking. But instead of lowering his tone, he slammed his hand on the table, making the cutlery rattle. "Don't embarrass me more than you already have. You've always been a burden, Angela. Tonight you are finished with us." People shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but no one stood up for me, not even Mom. She just sat there, eyes fixed on her plate, pretending she hadn't heard a thing. I wanted her to meet my eyes, just once, just for a second, but she didn't. That silence told me everything. She agreed with him. I felt my cheeks burn as tears threatened to fall, but I forced them back. They wanted me broken. They wanted me begging. Not this time. My whole life I had swallowed my pride, kept quiet when they favored Grace, kept quiet when they laughed at me. But tonight was different. Tonight, they were pushing me out, and they had no idea who I had become outside these walls. Grace stood up, pretending to comfort me, her fake sympathy dripping with poison. "Don't take it personally, Angie. You know Dad only wants the best for us." Us. She emphasized the word as if I wasn't even part of it. Then she leaned close, whispering so only I could hear. "Finally, you're gone. This family never wanted you anyway." Her words stung, but I smiled, a cold, small smile that confused her for a second. If only she knew. If only they all knew. As I turned toward the door, Dad shouted one last time, "Don't ever come back here. You're cut off, Angela. Don't expect a single dollar from this family ever again." His words made the whole room gasp. Some cousins laughed softly, others exchanged pity looks. To them, I was now nothing. I walked slowly through the crowd, each step heavy but steady. Every eye followed me. Every whisper cut deeper. Grace raised her glass again, smirking in victory, as if she had finally won the battle she had been fighting since childhood. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't walking out empty-handed. I wasn't walking out powerless. While they were busy celebrating their little victory, I had already won the war they didn't even know was coming. Because out there, beyond their perfect mansion, beyond their shallow wealth, I had something none of them could imagine, something that would destroy every piece of their fake pride. $58 million. And with one click, I could block every single account they owned. The cold air outside hit my face as I stepped out of the house. My heels clicked against the stone path, the sound strangely comforting after the chaos inside. I didn't look back, not even once. If I had, they would have seen my tears, but also my smile, a smile that would have terrified them. Because the truth was, tonight wasn't my end. Tonight was their beginning of hell. As I walked to my car, I remembered every single moment that led me here. I remembered being 16, watching Grace get everything. New clothes, expensive trips, her first car on her birthday, while I was told to be grateful for hand-me-downs. I remembered crying quietly when Dad refused to pay for my college, saying I wasn't worth investing in. They thought they broke me back then. But they didn't know that rejection was the fuel that lit the fire inside me. When I drove away from that house, the laughter from the party still echoing in my ears, I promised myself I would never step back inside until they begged me to, and I knew that day was coming, faster than they could imagine. The next morning, while they were probably still celebrating my humiliation, I sat in my glass-walled office, looking out over the city skyline. My assistant Clara walked in, carrying a folder. "Angela, the new investment deal went through. The transfer is complete. Congratulations, you just crossed $58 million in assets." Her words made me smile. Not the fake, tight smile I wore around my family, but a real one. Perfect, I whispered. Now let's raise the stakes. Clara looked at me curiously. Are you sure about going public with this? Once they find out, I cut her off with a small laugh. Oh, Clara, that's the point. They need to find out, but not yet. I want them to feel safe first. I want them to think they've won. Then I'll take everything they think they own. She nodded, but her eyes widened slightly. She had seen the ruthless side of me before. But tonight was different. Tonight I wasn't just a businesswoman. I was a woman with unfinished business. Later that evening, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Mom, Dad, even Grace. None of which I answered. My silence was louder than words, and I knew it was already driving them insane. By the third day, the calls turned into messages. Grace's voice note came first. Angela, listen, I didn't mean what I said. It was just the heat of the moment. Don't take it seriously, okay? We're sisters. I replayed it twice, laughing softly. Sisters? The same girl who whispered that my family never wanted me? The same girl who smiled when Dad threw me out? Then Dad's text arrived. Angela, whatever you think, this is still your family. Don't make decisions you'll regret. Let's talk. Regret? The only regret I had was trusting them for so long. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, letting their desperation sink in. I wasn't going to reply. Not yet. They needed to suffer a little more. They needed to feel what I had felt all those years. Unwanted, unworthy, invisible. Just then, Clara rushed in again. Angela, you need to see this. She handed me a tablet. On the screen was a headline from a financial news site. Harper Enterprises account suspended. Millions frozen overnight. My lips curved. It had begun. Clara looked nervous. They're going to know it's you. Good, I said calmly, locking the screen and setting the tablet aside. Let them know. That night, Grace finally broke. She called me over and over, her messages turning from fake apologies to desperate pleas. Angela, please, I can't access my credit cards. My accounts are frozen. What's happening? Did you do this? Tell me it's not you, please. Just help me once. I'll do anything. Anything. The word tasted sweet on my tongue. I almost replied, almost gave her hope. But then I remembered the smirk on her face at Thanksgiving. And I let her drown in silence. For the first time in my life, I was the one holding the power. And this was only the beginning. The following week, the cracks in their perfect world started to show. At first, it was just small whispers in the city. Rumors that Harper Enterprises was in trouble. Whispers that their accounts had mysteriously frozen. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Relatives, old family friends, even business partners who once ignored me. Everyone wanted to know if the rumors were true. I ignored them all. On the 5th day, Dad finally showed up at my office. For a man who always carried himself with pride, he looked smaller, almost defeated. But he tried to fake his old arrogance as he stepped inside. Angela, he said stiffly, we need to talk. I didn't stand up to greet him. I just sat behind my desk, one hand resting casually on the armrest of my chair. I thought I wasn't part of the family anymore, I said, my voice calm but sharp. He flinched, but covered it with a cough. That night, I may have overreacted. You know how emotions run high during family gatherings. Your sister, Grace? I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. Do you want me to play her voicemails for you? The ones where she called me trash and laughed about me being thrown out? Dad's jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw guilt flash in his eyes, but he quickly looked away. Angela, listen. Whatever you've done, undo it. Our accounts, our business, we're on the edge of collapse. Investors are panicking. Grace can't even pay for her wedding expenses. Do you understand what this means for our reputation? I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. Reputation? When you humiliated me in front of everyone, did you care about my reputation? When you told me I wasn't worth a single dollar, did you care about my future? No, Dad. You only care now because it's your empire burning. He slammed his fist on my desk, but the sound only made me smile. Angela, we are your blood. Families stick together. I laughed softly, the sound echoing in the office. Blood? You threw me out like a stranger. Don't talk about family now. For the first time in my life, my father looked powerless in front of me. His shoulders dropped and his voice softened. If not for me, then do it for your mother. She hasn't slept for days. She cries every night, Angela. She's breaking. His words almost touched something inside me, but then I remembered Mom's silence that night. She hadn't defended me, not even once. She had chosen comfort over courage. "Tell Mom," I said coldly, "that I finally learned silence from her. It works wonders." His face turned pale. Without another word, he stood up and left. The very next day, news exploded everywhere. Harper Enterprises loses major investors. Grace Harper spotted crying outside luxury boutique as her cards get declined. The pictures went viral, and comments flooded social media. The golden daughter, the one they all adored, was now the laughingstock. I scrolled through the headlines, sipping my coffee slowly. Clara asked, "Are you satisfied?" "Not yet," I whispered. "They've only tasted fear. I want them to choke on regret." That evening, Grace herself appeared outside my office. Her makeup was ruined, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Angela, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I can't live like this. I can't face people. They're laughing at me everywhere I go. Just stop, please, I'll apologize. I'll do anything." I looked at her, the sister who had always sneered at me, always taken what was mine, and for the first time, I saw her not as my rival, not as my tormentor, but as a broken doll. I stood, walked up to her and whispered in her ear, "This is just the beginning, Grace. I haven't even started yet." Her knees almost gave out as she clutched my arm. "What do you want from me?" she cried. I pulled back slowly, my smile cold. "Everything." And in that moment, I knew I had her exactly where I wanted. The city was buzzing with gossip, and my family's downfall was turning into entertainment for everyone. Every time I opened social media, I saw another headline about Grace's breakdown or Harper Enterprises' collapsing empire. Strangers laughed at their misery, and I sat in my office, calm as ever, watching it all unfold like a movie I had written years ago. One evening, Clara rushed into my office holding her phone. "Angela, you have to see this." She played a video that was spreading fast online. It showed Grace storming out of a store, yelling at the staff when her card was declined. "Do you even know who I am?" she screamed in the clip, before bursting into tears as paparazzi cameras flashed around her. I leaned back in my chair, a small smile forming. Perfect, the princess has finally tasted shame. But my mind wasn't satisfied yet. Making them lose money wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel exposed, humiliated the way they humiliated me, and I knew exactly how to do it. That weekend, a charity gala was scheduled at the city's grandest hotel. It was the same gala my father once refused to let me attend, saying, "You don't belong in circles like this, Angela." Grace had always been the face of the family there, walking the red carpet in her designer gowns, soaking up the attention. This year, they were still on the guest list, but with their accounts frozen, they had nothing left to show off. I decided to go. Not quietly, not as a guest, but as the star of the night. When I stepped out of my black car, the cameras turned instantly. The reporters who once ignored me shouted my name now. Angela Harper! Over here!" Flash after flash blinded me, but I walked with steady steps, my silver gown catching every light. For the first time, I wasn't the shadow. I was the spotlight. Inside, whispers followed me. Some people congratulated me. Others looked at me in disbelief. But when I walked into the ballroom, I spotted them. My parents and Grace. They stood near the back, awkward, dressed in clothes that were clearly borrowed. Grace's face went pale when she saw me, her glass almost slipping from her hand. The announcer's voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's largest donor contributing $5 million is Angela Harper." The crowd erupted in applause. I stood tall, smiling, as all eyes turned to me, and in that moment, I caught Dad's expression. Shock, disbelief, and something he never showed me before. Fear. As I walked past them, I heard Grace hiss under her breath. "This can't be real. She can't have this kind of money." I stopped, turned my head slightly, and looked her dead in the eye. "Oh, Grace, this is just the beginning. The gala was everything I had dreamed of." I stood on the stage, giving a short speech about resilience, about how rejection can build stronger people than privilege ever could. Every word was aimed at them, but no one else knew. The crowd cheered, while my family shrank smaller and smaller in the corner, trying not to be seen. When the event ended, I walked out with reporters still shouting my name, and I saw my father waiting near my car. His face was red, his hands shaking. "Angela," he said, voice trembling with both anger and desperation, "you're humiliating us. Publicly. What do you want from us? Money? Respect? Tell me." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "I don't want your money. I don't want your respect. I want you to know what it feels like when the world turns its back on you." He opened his mouth to reply, but I cut him off. "This is the taste of being me, and you haven't even swallowed the full dose yet." I left him standing there, trembling, as I got into my car. The cameras kept flashing, but all I could think was how sweet revenge felt when it was served slow, and deep down, I knew the next step would break them completely. The week after the gala, everything moved faster than I expected. One morning I woke to 1,000 new alerts. News channels, blogs, gossip pages. Everything I had arranged was spreading like wildfire. I didn't run any interviews. I didn't need to. I had given the right pieces of proof to the right people, and the rest did themselves. The first story that hit was about Harper Enterprises and a string of suspicious transactions. Small investors who trusted the family were asking questions. Regulators started to open inquiries. Lines of text, screenshots, and emails I'd quietly passed to a reputable journalist were now on every feed. Internal memos showing unauthorized transfers, invoices with fake vendors, and messages between a senior manager and someone listed as Grace's consultant. The narrative wrote itself: hubris, greed, cover-up. They tried to call it a smear campaign, but the documents were clean and time-stamped. For the public, it wasn't a question of guilt anymore. It was a story of deceit. For my family, it was a living nightmare. Calls came. Lawyers arrived. Grace's engagement photos were pulled down. Sponsors who had sponsored their charity events suddenly wanted nothing to do with the Harper name. When my mother read the first headline, she stood in the kitchen for a long time, chest heaving, staring at the paper as if it were a puzzle that would rearrange itself into something else. I watched her from the doorway. The woman who had once refused to meet my eyes now trembled in a way that made me think of the frightened girl I used to be. She folded the paper slowly, like a ritual, and then sat down heavily at the table. "Angela," she whispered, not asking, more like confessing. "What have you done?" "You did nothing when they needed you, Ma," I said, my voice softer than I expected. This is what happens when lies pile up. They collapse. She covered her face and made no sound. Guilt is heavy, and it sank into her shoulders like a tide. On the second day, a leaked audio clip aired on a major network. It was a recording from a private dinner where my father had argued with an investor and promised favors that were never disclosed publicly. In the clip, he laughed, then threatened the investor, a casual cruelty that sounded worse out of context. But the context was there too. People loved to watch the mighty fall, and TV producers were feeding them the moment. Grace called me that night, voice tiny over the static. "Angie, please stop. We can fix this together. Tell them you were joking. Tell them you did it for us." Her desperation tasted like the lies she'd once used to push me aside. I didn't say anything for a long time. In the silence, I could hear the city moving. The distant sirens, a neighbor's dog barking, the tiny life that had nothing to do with our names. "Fix it," I said finally, "by telling the truth." Her silence was long and full of pleading that had no plan behind it. Then she said, "If you ruin us, you ruin everything. You will never be part of any of this again." I smiled and hung up. She had always underestimated what I could lose or win. That arrogance had been her armor, and tonight it was cracking. The weeks turned cruel. Old family friends posted ambiguous sympathy messages that read like guilt without responsibility. My father's phone started to ring non-stop with collectors and angry partners. At a shareholders' meeting, the CEO of one of their subsidiaries was asked blunt questions and failed to answer. Panic in a boardroom looks different from panic at home. There's more pacing and less crying, but both are nerve unspooled. Then came the most delicious twist. Someone from inside their inner circle reached out to my team. A junior accountant, nervous and furious at being used as a scapegoat, sent us a folder filled with time-stamped spreadsheets. It showed transfers made to shell companies, and while the paper trail didn't say Grace or Dad, it linked to a vendor that had unusually close ties to the family's friends. That link, small and clean, made everything personal. I released the spreadsheet with a calm note. If you want truth, here it is. The newsrooms dug deeper. The comments section became a battlefield. People who had toasted the Harpers last season now clicked share with a sense of righteous glee. Grace's fiancé, who had stood behind her in glossy magazine pictures, announced on social media that he needed space to think, and within 48 hours he had quietly canceled the engagement party, citing scheduling conflicts. Friends stopped answering invitations. The social calendar closed like a trap. At a charity event 2 nights later, as the Harpers tried to salvage what they could, a live reporter asked Grace a simple question. How do you answer the allegations? And she could not. She stammered and then smiled in a way that made people pity her for being out of depth, not for being false. The clip played on loop. I watched it with a small cup of tea and felt the slow satisfaction of a lock turning. My father's health began to fail before the media stopped taking interest. High blood pressure, the doctor said, stress-related, a broken emperor suddenly vulnerable. He spent days in the hospital while statements were drafted and redrafted. When he was finally released, he had lost weight and color. But he still carried that stubborn look, the one that had him refuse to sign apologies and accept responsibility. One afternoon, as the legal team pushed him to settle with a small group of investors to stop the bleeding, he surprised everyone by requesting a meeting with me. His voice was thin when he asked, "Can we talk? Just you and me." I kept my answer neutral. "Where?" "At the old house. The place you left." Walking back into that house was strange. It smelled the same, lemon oil and old leather, but everything felt smaller. My father met me in the hallway, and for a second, I saw the man who had taught me to tie a tie, not the man who had called me worthless at Thanksgiving. "I'm sorry," he said, and his apology was clumsy as a child's, but it was an admission. For everything, I could have walked away. I could have finally delivered the knockout. Instead, I folded my arms and let him see me consider his words. "Apology doesn't fix broken things, Dad. It doesn't get back the years." My voice didn't waver. "But you can start fixing what's left. What do you want?" He looked raw, an exposed nerve. Truth, public truth, a statement, a confession. You clear the names of those who were hurt by mistakes and you accept responsibility for the rest. I wasn't asking for money. I didn't want his pride. I wanted accountability. He hesitated. Pride is not given up easily. But when the investor's lawyers called the next day with a new suit, his hand trembled and he signed what they handed him, an admission clause that made headlines. The papers screamed the next morning, "Harper Patriarch admits fault." Social feeds filled with analysis of his language and what it meant for the family's legacy. When the dust settled on that, people expected the end of the story. They thought the Harpers would kneel and that the world would turn the page. But a final twist waited, the kind that kills sympathy and leaves only the cold residue of betrayal. An old video surfaced, one that had been recorded years ago at a private family dinner. It showed Grace arguing with a friend about suppressing certain voices and keeping the public image clean. She joked about using little losses to keep big donors. Calm. Her laughter in the video was bright and cruel. People replayed it until the meaning sank in. She hadn't been an innocent daughter swept up in her father's mistakes. She had been an architect, polishing the family's shine while papers were being cooked behind the scenes. When that video went viral, the last shreds of loyalty snapped. The fiancé deleted his account. Sponsors severed ties. My mother's friends stopped inviting her. The family's world contracted to a few cold rooms and louder phones. I watched them fall and felt the odd mix of relief and sorrow. Revenge is not only about making others suffer. Sometimes it's about closure. Sometimes it's about watching truth clear the air like a storm. But as the headlines faded and the cameras moved on, I knew my work was not done. The people who mattered, those who had deliberately hurt me, still had one card left to play, and I could see them reaching for it. They were planning one last act, something that could swing public opinion